Thanks for joining us on the CBN News Channel. I'm Charlene Israel. Rioters angry over the George Zimmerman verdict tore through the streets of Los Angeles overnight. Now one of the jurors is speaking out. She says she voted to acquit Zimmerman because she believed he feared for his life. Gary Lane has more.
Angry protesters ran through the streets of Los Angeles for a second night, interrupting traffic, breaking windows, and even looting a Walmart store. Police struggled to contain the unrest to the Crenshaw district, the heart of LA's black community. Meanwhile, one of the 6 jurors in the Zimmerman trial, known only as juror number 37B, told CNN she voted to acquit George Zimmerman in the shooting death of Trayvon Martin because she had no doubt Zimmerman feared for his life. She said both Martin and Zimmerman could have walked away from their tragic encounter. She said, "I think all of us thought race did not play a role. We never had that discussion." Juror 37B said 3 jurors favored convicting Zimmerman, but changed their minds after repeated scrutiny of the evidence presented at the trial. Zimmerman's whereabouts are not known, but his parents are concerned for his safety.
It's a lot of death threats on, in the social media.
We've had an enormous amount of death threats.
And even though Zimmerman was found not guilty of criminal charges, his ordeal may not end anytime soon. Civil rights leaders are pushing for federal charges.
Clearly, there are grounds for civil rights charges here. We always said there would be a plan B, but there needed to be a plan A. There would never have been protests if there had been an arrest.
The U.S. Department of Justice is still considering a civil rights case against Zimmerman.
I share your concern. And as we first acknowledged last spring, we have opened an investigation into this matter.
And Martin's parents are considering a possible wrongful death lawsuit against Zimmerman as well. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Churches in Sanford, Florida are opening their doors for prayer to help ease tensions in their community. A group called Sanford Pastors Connecting will be holding prayer meetings each Monday at noon. The city's mayor, city manager, and police chief attended a prayer rally at New Life Word Center Church. The pastor of the church says they prayed for both the Zimmerman and Martin families. They also prayed for unity, peace, and better community relations. The mayor expressed thanks that no violence has happened in the city. A blistering heat wave is scorching parts of the country today. From Michigan to the East Coast, temperatures are soaring into the 90s, but the heat and humidity will make it feel even hotter. Last year, at least 155 people died from heat-related illness. Cities are taking action to help protect their citizens. Advisories and warnings are in place in Boston, New York City, Baltimore, and Philadelphia. And several cities in the Northeast opened cooling centers to help residents beat the heat. In Portland, Maine, 5 people were taken to a hospital after being overcome by the heat during a half marathon. Those who are to be outside are encouraged to take frequent breaks and drink lots of water.
You ever been close to death? It's about 2 steps closer. Literally, there's nothing you can do to keep cool.
Walking around in this heat, you have to kind of overhydrate. You have to drink even if you're not thirsty.
Forecasters say the heat wave will continue for several days, expanding into the Midwest and northern plains by midweek. Major arrests this week in an international child exploitation investigation. Immigration and customs officials say they've arrested 255 people. They also identified 61 child victims during the 5-week investigation. The International Joint Task Force is known as Operation Eye Guardian. Agents say they're seeing a disturbing new trend. Predators are turning more and more to the internet for crimes, sexually exploiting minors to produce graphic images and videos.
The internet is too big, the numbers of abusers too large, elusive, and scattered throughout the world. Deceit, impersonation, and blackmail are the tricks of this terrible trade.
So far this year, more than 1,600 arrests have been made in similar investigations. The NSA agent accused of spilling the beans on America's most sensitive surveillance intelligence apparently has more secrets. Edward Snowden reportedly has the blueprint documents of how our country's national security agency operates. And if the information is made public, it could harm the United States. George Thomas has the details.
If you thought Edward Snowden's revelations of the NSA's massive snooping operation was all he had, think again.
In order to take documents that proved that what he was saying was true, he had to take ones that included very sensitive, detailed blueprints.
Glenn Greenwald is the columnist with a British newspaper who first reported on the intelligence leaks. He says Snowden has what he calls the instruction manual for how the NSA is built.
He's in possession of literally thousands of documents that contain very specific blueprints that would allow somebody who read them to know exactly how the NSA does what it does.
And perhaps more alarming is just how easy it was for Snowden to apparently get his hands on the treasure trove of data.
Being able to inform people about the true severity of how much each NSA analyst has access to people's personal private communications with very little oversight, checks, or safeguards.
Snowden emerged for the first time in weeks last Friday, still in hiding in a Moscow airport. He wants Russian asylum until he can legally travel on to Latin America. Russia says they'll grant his request, but on condition he stops the leaks. Greenwald says the NSA agent has scores of documents on other surveillance programs that, if released publicly, would be very harmful to the United States.
There are other domestic spying programs that have yet to be revealed, similar in nature to the ones we have revealed.
The White House wants Russia to send him back to face felony charges.
He's very resigned to the fact that things might go terribly wrong, and he absolutely is at peace with that.
And Greenwald has this warning to anyone trying to harm Snowden.
It's not simply a matter of if he dies, things get released. It's more nuanced than that. It's really a way to just protect himself against extremely rogue behavior on the part of the United States, by which I mean violent actions towards him designed to end his life.
George Thomas, CBN News.
The California Supreme Court says it will not order the state to stop issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples. After the U.S. Supreme Court ruling last month, California's governor and attorney general told county clerks that the voter-approved ban on gay marriages was legally invalid. But supporters of Proposition 8 filed a lawsuit asking the state to continue enforcing the gay marriage ban while their legal battle continues. The California High Court refused their request, but says it will consider whether the governor and attorney general acted correctly in the wake of the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling. Well, Great Britain is another step closer to legalizing gay marriage. On Monday, a bill passed through the House of Lords. It now goes back to the House of Commons, where it's expected to win final approval. The bill is not passing completely unopposed. Christians have gathered to pray and show their support for traditional marriage, and many conservative lawmakers are breaking their ranks with Prime Minister David Cameron over his support of the law. The bill does bar the Church of England from performing gay marriages. Since the church's founding, Christians have risked their lives to share the good news. This month marks the 200th anniversary of one American's mission to plant the church in Burma, also known as Myanmar. Adoniram Judson first set foot in the Asian nation 200 years ago. His ministry was the fulfillment of prophecy, and he left an amazing Christian legacy, not only for Burma, but for the world. Gary Lane has this story from Mandalay.
Folklore of Burma's ethnic Karen tells of a golden book given to them by God. The book was either lost or destroyed, but prophecy foretold of a day in the future when a white brother would come and reunite them with a copy of the book and the one true God. That prophecy was fulfilled July 13, 1813, when American Baptist missionary Adoniram Judson and his wife Anne arrived in Rangoon. The Buddhists and animists of Burma resisted the gospel. Judson didn't win his first convert until 6 years later. Pastor Mong of the Judson Baptist Church of Ongpinle explains why.
Most people feared losing their jobs, and they were not willing to get away from the Buddhist and cultural tradition. They didn't want to abandon their deeply rooted traditions.
Judson was jailed in June 1824 after war broke out between Burma and Britain. He was confined to a prison that used to stand on this site in Ava. An ancient guard tower still overlooks the area. Judson and other foreigners were held captive in shackles, suspected of spying for the British. Judson wrote about his prison sufferings, saying he would gladly consign them to oblivion. Burmese Christians built a monument right here. It stood about this high. It was to commemorate the time that Judson spent in prison. This was the site of his first imprisonment. But in the early 1990s, government officials tore it down. But throughout the years, numerous Burmese governments, including the current military regime, have failed to stop the advancement of Christianity and Judson's legacy. Judson endured a grueling 6-month journey after being released from the first prison. He was brought to the second prison on this site here in Mandalay. Today, it is home to the Judson Baptist Church. Judson was held captive for a total of 21 months. Perhaps his greatest accomplishment after his release was translating the first Burmese language Bible. Initial copies were printed in October 1840. One is housed here in Ong Pinlay at the Judson Baptist Church. Pastor Mong is determined to see that Judson's legacy lives on.
We need to know and understand the life of Judson and how he persevered because of the gospel. And secondly, we need to learn from him the way he lived, the way he shared the gospel. Please pray that we should lead the way, and please pray for this church also. It has a good legacy in the history of Burmese Christians and those who are doing ministry around the remote area of the country. Pray for them too.
Evangelists working to assure that seeds planted by Judson nearly 200 years ago continue growing and bearing fruit for generations to come. Gary Lane, CBN News, Mandalay, Burma.
Coming up, new ammunition in the fight against Alzheimer's. Welcome back. Baby boomers are having to remain in the workforce longer before taking retirement. However, there could be a bright side to that reality. New research says the longer you work, the less likely you are to develop Alzheimer's disease. CBN's health reporter Lori Johnson tells us why that's true and passes on more tips for preventing Alzheimer's.
Our choices can make a difference about whether we get Alzheimer's or keep it at bay. So says a study of 500,000 people that shows for each additional year a person worked, the risk of getting Alzheimer's was reduced by 3%. The reason is because working is more demanding than retirement, physically, mentally, and socially. Stimulation in all three of those areas leads to a healthy brain because they increase the blood flow in the brain and also increase chemicals that protect the brain and slow its deterioration. In addition to those activities, a healthy brain also depends on a good diet, according to a study at the Oregon Health and Science University.
We're interested in things that might have a role in the prevention of Alzheimer's disease, but also looking for things that might be actually causing the disease.
Bowman and his colleagues studied 104 seniors with an average age of 87 and found people who ate trans fats scored lower on thinking and memory tests. Trans fat is in processed foods. It's called hydrogenated oil in the list of ingredients. It's also in fast food, margarine, and vegetable shortening.
Trans fats are, they're kind of all over the place.
On the other hand, seniors who ate diets high in vitamins B, C, D, and E, as well as omega-3 fats, scored higher.
So it's a combination of staying away from the bad and getting the good. If you just do one, you may not get the bonus effect.
Some Alzheimer's patients exhibit tremendous improvement after taking coconut oil. Steve Newport's Alzheimer's was so advanced, this is what happened when he tried to draw a picture of a clock. But then his wife, who's also a doctor, started giving him coconut oil. And 2 weeks later, his clock drawing was much better.
I thought at the time, was it just good luck? Was it a lot of prayer? Was it the coconut oil? And I thought, well, we're going to keep the coconut oil going.
3 weeks later, his clock drawing demonstrated an even healthier brain. Dr. Newport wrote a book about Steve's success with coconut oil and has since heard from readers with similar stories.
Some of these responses have been quite dramatic, and I do have a collection now of almost 220 reports, mostly from caregivers and some from the person themselves, reporting that they saw improvement after they started taking coconut oil.
So there are lots of things you can do to improve your brain health, stimulate your mind with work and puzzles, challenge your body with cardiovascular and strength training, and connect emotionally with others. Also, eat a diet rich in vitamins, omega-3 fats, and coconut oil while avoiding trans fats. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Up next, we'll tell you about the shadowy organization whose goal it is to take down Western democracy. The Muslim Brotherhood suffered a major setback earlier this month in Egypt when Mohamed Morsi was ousted as president. But the group is still strong and very active worldwide, including in the United States and Europe. As Mark Martin reports, the Brotherhood has been spreading its influence here in the West for decades.
The Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt is on its heels after the recent military coup that displaced Mohamed Morsi as president and saw several Brotherhood leaders arrested. Elsewhere, however, the Brotherhood continues to thrive. From Germany to Britain to America and beyond, the brothers maintain a well-established network that seeks to undermine host societies and establish Islamic Sharia law. In his new book, The Brotherhood, America's Next Great Enemy, terrorism analyst Erick Stakelbeck tells the story of a group that has waited patiently for a century to subvert democracy and replace it with tyranny. He says that despite knowing this history, however, many Western governments continue to compromise with the Brotherhood, and he says this misguided thinking could have devastating consequences.
CBN News terrorism analyst Erick Stakelbeck is here to talk about his new book, The Brotherhood, America's Next Great Enemy. Erick, thanks for joining us.
Charlene, great to be here.
First of all, the Muslim Brotherhood is still very dangerous, even though they've been ousted from power. How is that?
Yeah, well, you know, Charlene, look, Egypt might be the mothership or the brothership, so to speak, for the Muslim Brotherhood, but as I point out in the book, they are present in some 80 countries around the world. This is a global Islamist movement, Charlene. And yes, they are here in America. They are in our backyard in the United States. I document again and again in the book shocking accounts, really, of Muslim Brotherhood operatives advising our government on its counterterrorism Middle East policies. You know, I've sat down with Brotherhood members, Charlene, face to face. I've interviewed them. I've got inside their heads, and they are very dangerous. They're a different beast than al-Qaeda. They wear suits and ties. They dress like me, but they have a sinister agenda. Very deceptive.
What are they doing here in the U.S.? You mentioned they're advising our government, but what are some of the other things?
Here's the three branches they're trying to get a foothold in, Charlene, and they're doing it successfully, I might add. Government, as we mentioned, media, and academia. Muslim Brotherhood strategic documents, and I lay these documents out in the book. Our government has these documents in their possession, Charlene. The Brotherhood's own strategic documents lay out their strategy, and they say, look, we're going to be subversive, a stealthy kind of jihad. They're like termites eating away at our society from within, and they say government, media, academia, the halls of power, positions of influence, that's where we will set up shop and gain power.
And why is our government so passive about the Muslim Brotherhood?
Charlene, in doing the research for this book, that proved to be the most frustrating thing for me, because these guys are obviously Islamists in sheep's clothing. It's clear that their agenda is anti-American, anti-Semitic, pro-jihad. It's been their ideology from the beginning. Yet our government looks at them, Charlene, and these guys are wearing suits and ties. They're eloquent, well-spoken. These aren't guys with the long beards in the caves in Pakistan, right? And our government looks at them and says, hey, these guys are pretty moderate. We can use them as a counterweight to al-Qaeda. These guys are reasonable. We can talk to them. To say this is a flawed, destructive strategy, Charlene, is an understatement, hurting us badly. And I have to say, without the Muslim Brotherhood, to give you an idea of how dangerous they are, without the Brotherhood, 9/11 would not have happened. Wow. And I say that because the Muslim Brotherhood has been the ideological driving force of all the terrorism we're seeing right now. It started with the Brotherhood.
What are some of the other countries they're operating in?
You know, right now, a country in the headlines, Charlene, Syria. You have the Muslim Brotherhood and al-Qaeda on the same side. Now, that kind of shoots a hole in the theory that we can use them against al-Qaeda, right? They are aligned together. They're fighting against the Assad regime in Syria, Iran. So very active in Syria, active in Jordan. Gaza, Hamas, is the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. all of the countries surrounding Israel have strong Muslim Brotherhood branches, and that's no coincidence because one of the bedrocks of the Brotherhood's belief system, Charlene, is anti-Semitism. They want to wipe Israel off the map, and not only Israel, every Jew on the face of the earth, the Brotherhood wants to eliminate.
Wow. Well, what do you expect if the U.S. and the world take no decisive action against them?
I believe that they will grow. Look, they have taken a major hit in Egypt. I can't understate that enough, overstate it, I should say. They've taken a hit in Egypt, but 80 countries, they're still alive. And when I call the Brotherhood America's next great enemy, Charlene, I'm not just talking about the Brotherhood. I'm talking about this entire global jihadist movement, which includes al-Qaeda, which includes homegrown jihadists like the Boston bombers. That is the threat. The Brotherhood is just the main driving force, the fount of all the terror we're seeing. But if we don't take decisive action, they will win. And they're winning right now.
What kind of action should we take?
Well, number one, identify and acknowledge the enemy. Hello, we can't even use the terms radical Islam, Islamofascism. The Obama administration and even the Bush administration during the tail end in his second term became very politically correct in dealing with this threat. They refused to identify the enemy. Anything having to do with Islam is off limits. Very dangerous for the American people. First rule of war, know your enemy.
Wow. Erick Stakelbeck, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your insights and good luck on the book.
Thank you, Charlene.
Excellent. Well, the book is found where books are sold, America's Next Great Enemy, and you can find it wherever books are sold, as I said. Again, thanks for joining us, Erick.
Thank you, Charlene.
Finally, President Obama says the nation is kinder and gentler thanks to former President George H.W. Bush. Bush, sporting his now signature bold socks, joined Mr. Obama in the White House Monday to honor the 5,000th winner of the Daily Point of Light Award, an honor created by former President Bush nearly 20 years ago to honor volunteerism.
Mr. President, I'm one of millions of people who've been inspired by your passion and your commitment. You have helped so many Americans discover that they too have something to contribute, that they too have the power to make a difference.
Floyd Hammer and Kathy Hamilton, a retired couple from Iowa, were honored for delivering meals to hungry children in more than 15 countries. I love President George H.W. Bush. God bless him. Well, that's going to do it now for the CBN News Channel. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com, and tell us what you think about the stories you've seen today on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. Have a great day.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.